Here are some of the dirty secrets in the ecom space that many agency owners will not tell you, or people at agencies will not tell you. So let's go ahead and get into it. These are some of the things that I've learned over my years so far in the ecom space that are really kind of unspoken things in the agency space. So the first thing when it comes to ad agency specifically is ads that scale are not what you think. People who are good at marketing know this. Now, here's what I mean. What do you hear about online? Oh, this ad got a 9x ROAS. This ad got a 7x ROAS. It performed so great. Maybe it did, but at what spend? How much money was it spending relative to the other ads? And here's what I mean. Was that the ad that scaled the account that got the highest ROAS? Probably not. And here's what I mean by this. The ads that scale the account, they're often not. It could be, in some cases, you could have an ad that comes in at a low cost per purchase inside the ad account. But more often than not, what you'll see, when you get a good ad that scales an ad account, and it appeals to a broad audience of people. Maybe it's a founder story video. Maybe it's whatever. It could be whatever top of funnel ad it is. When you get an ad that is top of funnel, that spends a significant amount of money, that appeals to a broad audience of people, oftentimes that ad is not going to have the lowest cost per purchase or the highest ROAS. It may have a good CPM. It may have a low frequency. It may get a lot of spend. It may create an incremental lift in sales. It may be getting cheaper clicks even. But most likely, that ad that scales the account is probably not going to have the best ROAS. But everybody wants to talk about how to get the best ROAS. Everybody talks about this ad over here that got this 7x ROAS with $20 of spend. But they don't talk about the ads that actually scale the accounts. The guys who are ethical, who are honest, typically what they're looking at are blended metrics. They're saying, hey, this ad spent this much money and it got this percentage of spend. It got the majority of the spend, or it got a large portion of spend. And when this happened, look what happened to the blended metrics inside the business. You see the difference? That tells more of the full story when you're looking at not just the cost per purchase, but also the blended metrics and the incremental effect that the ads have on the bottom line of the business and on the cost of acquisition for new customers. That tells more of the full story. And that's what a lot of these agencies will not tell you, is that the ads that scale accounts, a lot of times, it's not always the ads with the lowest cost per purchase. It's not always the ads with the highest ROAS. A lot of times those are bottom of funnel ads that don't spend hardly anything. They spend less money and they come in at a higher cost per result, but they're not scaling the account. They're not the ads that are creating the incremental lift. So that's the first one that I can't stand seeing, because you see it time and time again. It's that people are constantly talking about the ROAS, and you can just know that these people, they aren't very experienced when it comes to marketing, when they're just obsessing over the ROAS inside the ad account. And that's all they talk about is ROAS. Blended metrics are what you should be more focused on. So the next thing here is white labeling. This one is an interesting one. So there's this thing that nobody likes to tell you about in the agency space, where you may be working with an agency. You may have paid them $4,000, $5,000 a month. Maybe you're happy with the service, who knows? But you may be paying them this retainer or whatever it is for their service. And little do you know, they've subcontracted you out to some other agency, and they're paying them a certain amount of money, and they're just keeping the profit. This is a common thing that you got to keep your eyes out for in the agency space, where you may not even be working with the actual agency that you think you are. You may be working with a different agency and not even realize it. So keep your eye out. And this is not to say that just because somebody's a contractor means they're not skilled, or somebody's a freelancer means they're not skilled, or because somebody white labels something out to somebody else that it's going to be bad work. But people don't like to tell you about white labeling and how this is actually a common thing that you'll see. Some agencies, they offer this as a service for other agencies where they do the work at a good price point, and then they allow them to basically make money on top of that. Kind of like private label, except they do it with digital service-based products. They'll plug them into their Slack groups. They say, oh, we're white label friendly. A lot of people don't realize this. I'm telling you because I don't have anything to sell you. I don't benefit from giving you this information. And even if I did have something to sell you, I would do so in an ethical way. I wouldn't try to deceive you. I want to be honest with people. But a lot of people don't operate that way, right? And so keep your eyes out for people who are trying to white label their services, who may not even be the person you're actually working with. And they may, for example, some signs of this may be, for instance, lack of communication, delayed communication. If you're working with an agency and it takes a while for them to respond, if you're messaging them about something or whatever the case is, and it seems like you're not really like a priority, these could potentially be signs of white labeling. Not to say that the service is going to be bad necessarily just because they white labeled it out, but it's something to be mindful of, because you may just be costing yourself extra money not to work direct with whatever agency that is, or making the quality of your service less. The next thing is, in many cases, there's a lot of things that you probably shouldn't hire an agency for. And there's a lot of things where if you would just work directly, either do it yourself, if you could learn it yourself, that's always an option, or work directly with a freelancer, you could save yourself a lot of money and time just to have this, agency who has a specialist for this thing and a specialist for this thing, and they're managing 10 other accounts, and you're like one of 10 other people who they're trying to manage, versus you working directly with a freelancer where maybe that freelancer is actually getting paid the full amount of the money that you're paying them, not just a salary to manage 10, 20 different accounts or whatever, right? Then maybe they're working with a handful of people, and since you're actually, all the money that you're paying them is going to them, they're giving you more time and more attention and more of their focus and energy, because you get to work directly with them, and all that money is going directly to them, not to the agency where they're going to pay a little bit of money to somebody to manage your account or whatever it may be. So in many cases, with a lot of things, you may get a much better quality of work and much better service just to go work directly with whoever it is, or work with a freelancer. So rather than going out and hiring an agency for this and hiring an agency for that, sure, are there good ones out there? Yes, but there's also a lot of bad ones, and there's also a lot that will cost you a lot of money, right? So in many cases, just be careful what you were hiring an agency for, right? Make sure that it actually makes sense financially to hire an agency. And any good agency who's actually good at what they do, they're probably going to be doing their due diligence first to make sure it's a good fit for you either way, right? If they aren't doing that, that might be a red flag, right? If they aren't vetting you first, if they don't ask you questions, they're just like, oh, sure, we could sign you for this. Like, they need to make sure that it makes sense for you financially. A good agency will want to make sure that the deal with whatever it is that they're offering, whatever service they're providing, not only makes sense for them, but also makes sense for you to help you out, right? So that's one of the things that you need to be mindful of if you're looking for an agency, right? So the next thing is, I'll give you a summary of how many agencies will hire people who may be working on your account. I was working as a freelancer. This was years ago. And, I worked with various different clients on freelancing platforms and stuff. There's mainly one that I worked on. Anyway, so I was working with a client one time, and they put me inside a ad account, and they're spending a pretty significant amount of money. I believe it was maybe, I don't want to say for sure because I can't remember. I think it was in the thousands of dollars a day. Like this was a pretty decent amount of money. And at the time, I was not that experienced, right? And so I was working on this account. I was responsible largely for managing, optimizing this account and everything. And they just put me in this account and let me with no training, no interview, nothing. Like just put me in this account and had me start working. And they were paying me at the time. It was not a lot of money, like maybe 25, 30 bucks an hour at the time. Not a lot of money at all, right? For this type of work, right? And they put me in this account and they have me just optimizing these listings or whatever it is. They have me optimizing the ads and stuff, and doing stuff inside the account and managing this account for somebody who's spending potentially thousands of dollars a day. And they didn't even vet me at all outside of probably looking at my profile and seeing all the reviews and stuff that I had. They didn't do any real vetting of me. They didn't do an interview, like a phone interview or anything. And they're having me in this account. They've given me access to this person's account. They have me making changes in this account. What if I was somebody who didn't know what the heck I was doing? At the time, they're paying me next to nothing. It's very, very low rate for this kind of work as a freelancer doing part-time work. They're paying me very little money for this, right? This client's probably paying them a fat retainer, right? Because they're a pretty good sized client. Like they're doing, thousands of dollars a day in sales, just on their Amazon alone. Like this client's probably paying them a pretty good amount of money to manage this. And they just go out and they hire some random person that they didn't even vet to manage this account. Like, tell me if that's the kind of service that you want, managing your account, why wouldn't you just go out, find your own freelancer, you do the interviewing, and have them work with them directly on your account and make sure that you were hiring the right person, because now you can actually handle all that. Would that not be smarter rather than paying a fat retainer to somebody who's just going to go subcontract it out to some freelancer or potentially white label to a different agency? You see what I'm saying? So in some of these cases with who you're hiring, or when you're hiring an agency, it may make more sense to potentially just either A, you could learn some of the stuff yourself, or B, work with somebody who's a highly skilled freelancer. Now, the key here is they have to be skilled. You can't just go find any freelancer, right? Whoever you're hiring for, especially any kind of technical role, don't go hire somebody for $5 an hour and expect them to be a freaking expert at whatever it is that they're doing. Like a highly technical, highly skilled role, you need to be finding somebody, you need to be looking at what the market rate is and be willing to, I would say, pay more than that, right? So look at the market rate for a contractor in that industry, and I would be willing to pay even slightly above that for whoever it is that you're hiring if you want a high level of service at whatever it is. Because if you don't, you're probably going to be paying for mistakes also along the way and miss things that people without the skill would not see. And probably it's going to take them longer potentially to do the same job. So you're going to probably pay that either way. It would be better to just pay a little bit extra to potentially avoid mistakes or have less mistakes. So that would be my, not financial advice, I don't know your business, but that would be my piece of advice, just general advice, when it comes to hiring in a business and working with like an agency. Like just potentially with a lot of this stuff, you could go work directly with a freelancer and get a better quality of service if you have a highly skilled A player of a freelancer. That's the key here. The freelancer's got to be good. If you work with a freelancer, they have to be a good freelancer. So don't just go work with any freelancer, who you find off the street. Make sure you do your due diligence and know how to hire and who to hire and when to hire. So yeah, that's kind of how a lot of agencies hire. And what's the last thing here? The last thing I'll say, you don't want to work with the biggest agency, in my opinion. And the reason I say that, if you were a business who is not doing, I would say, 8 figures a year, for example, if you're not doing 8 figures a year, you probably don't want to be looking for the biggest agency out there. And the reason I say that is you're probably not going to be able to afford a big agency who's good. If you find a big agency who works with lots of clients that you can afford, and they're doing, for example, let's say, for example, they have some service that they're willing to offer you on $1,000 a month retainer or something like that to manage your ads. And this is some big name brand agency, right? Well, here's the truth. Most likely what you are going to get with these big agencies who are willing to offer these services that are kind of massively appealing at this low price point that's competitive with what you'd find with the other smaller agencies and stuff, most likely they're not very good at what they do, or the level of service that you're going to get is very low. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to say the name. I'm not going to out this person because they did actually send a refund, apparently. So I did get a notification at least that they sent a refund. There is this big marketing agency out there from a well-known guy in the marketing space, like one of the more well-known guys in the marketing space. I'm not going to say the name. They're doing this offer for some ads, right? And they're doing this offer for these ads, and they're promoting, I don't want to give away too many details. They're promoting something in this offer, and we wanted to try it out for a business that I run ads for. And so I'm like, you know what the heck? A few $100 or something for this ad offer that they're running. Why don't we just try it out, see how they turn out, see if there's anything good. Now, don't get me wrong. The copy was actually okay. Like the copy was decent. But what they sent for the ads was not at all what they were marketing. They marketed this certain lead time. It ended up being weeks past that before we got the ads. The communication was terrible. I had to fill out this form multiple times. Just a very bad experience, like painful all around. They're trying to pitch me on this other stuff, and we get on this call. They didn't even talk about the ads hardly. You know, it's just like the entire process was just this spammy, kind of scammy feeling process with how they were going about conducting their business. And then we get the ads. Now, let me tell you, I was not expecting at this price point to be just blown away with some amazing, amazing ads, to be quite honest. I'm expecting something decent, like something like, hey, this is pretty good at this price point that we paid for these ads, right? You know, if this is some trial offer or whatever where they're trying to prove their value for a low price, I mean, I would expect something at least decent, you know, if they're about it. Now, what they sent us was a bunch of crap, in my opinion. So they sent us these ads, and not trying to be mean, not trying to be disrespectful, but it was just a complete waste of our time, to where we get these ads and it wasn't even what they advertised. That was the problem that I had. What they sent us was not even what they had advertised. They didn't show our actual product in any of the ads. It's all just like generic stuff that I could have probably gone into ChatGPT, for example, and made with an AI image generator within 30 minutes. And we waited weeks for these ads. They sent us more than what we had originally bought, but they were all crap. None of these ads were good. You know, none of them were even like really usable hardly. Like they're barely even usable, you know, and it was really disappointing. And I was just thinking, like, this is one of the biggest, most well-known agencies potentially out there. One of the bigger ones, at least out there in the marketing space. Their service overall was just not very good, in my opinion. It was just not very good. I was not a fan. And what they sent us was just, it was very, very poor quality, in my opinion. Like I could have done better. And I'm not a graphic designer. With the images that they sent, we're supposed to have some videos, but with the images that they had sent, I could have made better images myself. Like doing it myself, I could have made better images for those. And that's the kind of stuff that you're going to run into if you go out and you look for the biggest agency out there, right? If you go out and you look for the biggest agency out there at a price that you can afford, and you're a small business, you're doing under a few $1 million a year, and you go out and you try to find the biggest agency. Who's the biggest? They got to be the best. You're looking for the wrong type of agency. If you want to hire an agency, are there good ones out there? Yeah. But here's the truth. A lot of times the good agencies who are going to give you the best level of service, they're working with a handful of clients. They're working with maybe 5, maybe 10 clients, somewhere in that ballpark. They're not working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients on these low ticket projects where they've got all these different people and this. it's just a complete mess. How are they going to give you any kind of quality level of service for your company when that's how they're operating their business? They just can't do it, right? And so you don't need to go find the biggest agency out there. You need to find, if you want a good agency, in my opinion, go find you a lean agency that operates efficiently, that works with a handful of clients, and it's a team of just like a handful of killers at everything that they do. Like they've got a copywriting guy, for example, who is just a killer at copywriting, amazing copywriter. They've got a CRO guy or whatever who is just a master of CRO. They've got a marketing guy, whatever the case is. Like they've got a handful of people who are just really, really good at what they do and really, really skilled at what they do. And they have a lot of really good feedback. And another red flag to look for, if you can't find proof, if they aren't showing like actual reviews, if they aren't showing actual testimonials, if they don't send you actual examples of whatever it is that you were trying to buy, I probably wouldn't buy that. I probably would not waste your time or money if they can't actually show you examples of what it is that they're offering, of results, of case studies, and give you actual brand names, for example. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to agencies. Once again, this is not financial advice. I don't know your specific business, but based on everything I've seen, these are some of the secrets that a lot of agency owners, they're not going to tell you, because a lot of them, they just care about making money, right? And if you know these things, then they don't make as much money potentially, So if you're smart about this stuff, you can avoid costing yourself a bunch of money by hiring an agency who's actually wasting your money or doesn't know what the heck they're doing. So if you guys found this helpful, feel free to leave a comment below, give me a subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next.